Hi, my name's Jeff Wheat. I'm the CTO for Lumu, and today we want to talk to you about the future of cybersecurity operations and where we think the future of that lies, and where the industry's going with respect to that, or where it needs to go with respect to that. But before I do that, I want to give you a little bit of context on my background, so you can kind of see where the operational insights are coming from as I present this. Look, NSA got me straight out of college, University of Kansas, back before anyone knew who they were. No such agency, right? So I thought they were NASA. They didn't have a sense of humor over that. But in and out of that world, I've been with artificial intelligence group that was building threat intelligence cells for large healthcare groups using IBM Watsons and stuff. More recently, I ran Anheuser-Busch's Security Operations Center out of their global one out of Bangalore, India. And then most recently, I was a CISO with an incident response group where we did a number, but we did at least 75 incident response in 45 days, just over the half game deal. So a lot of operational background in terms of that I like to apply to these viewpoints and stuff. So I just wanted to get that to you so you could understand where some of my comments are coming from. So the reality, look, all organizations are forced to operate cybersecurity. There's no longer, security by obscurity. It's too easy to find you. It's automated. You've got the Russian business networks that have, basically automated everything. You leave a port open, they're going to find it, right? So everyone's got to operate this. There's no hiding from it. And the problem is operating a cybersecurity is hard. It's complex, and unfortunately, vendors aren't making it any easier for you by just providing you more data. We don't have a data problem. We have a too much data problem. Too many times you're trying to find the needle in the needle stack. So, making our systems more complex, multiple layers, requiring, certifications and things of that nature in order to understand that platform and get to ground truth aren't helping you out. And any vendor that gives you more data, more alerts is not helping you out in that case. So they're not making that less complex for you. On top of that, the bad guys hide in the noise. They use legitimate processes. They deliberately do that, and it extends their dwell time. And I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But by doing that, it's making it more complex for you to find the actual problem. You've got to lower the noise floor so that you can see the actual signal that the bad guy is in there. That is a complex process that requires complex people. Unfortunately, there's a labor shortage. We talk about the Great Resignation. I'm going to talk about that next. But I don't know if the Great Resignation in cyber is true, but one thing's for certain is we do have a labor shortage, and it's not going to get any easier. So it continues to get harder on you. So let's talk about that, myth or reality. The talent shortage is real. Across the country, there's 700K positions at any one time that are open. I know in Kansas City, where I'm at any one time, we have 4,500 to 5,000. We've tried to reach back into earlier, think of the security talent as a pipeline and develop that talent at an earlier stage. And we're working with our, local junior colleges, University of Kansas, to make students come out, ready-made, work ready when they come out, and to entice more students, female students, diversity, different groups that, weren't in the STEM roles early on. We're reaching into that. Now, Lumu also lives that role. We're doing that with Dade County out of Miami to help grow our own. So, this has got to be something that everyone's got to get on board and start developing that talent ahead. You can't just rely on the schools, so we need to be a part of that. So in general, though, cybersecurity solutions need to make our lives easier. If it's making it more complex, if it's making it harder for us, it's not doing you any favors. We're well beyond that. In an earlier session that we had with Lumu, one of our speakers talked about, this last decade was the decade of the SIM, but the new decade is the orchestration and automation, and those are key. And it's always, the technology needs to catch up. Right now that orchestration automation isn't taking off because vendors aren't playing well together. And the integration has to work. It has to be simple. There needs to be that glue. Where I come from, we call it interlocking fields of fire or layered defenses. Bad things happen when people get through the gaps and get behind you. It's the same in cyber. So we've got to get all those systems. We can't have these siloed systems that are working autonomously by themselves. We need an integrated system. So that's key. So what does that leave us with? Well, because of that, we have a large dwell time. IBM put out a study that, the average dwell time was 207 days, and it's saying here the breach takes a total of 277. and understand that if you are breached with ransomware and stuff, it's not just a matter of getting the bad guys out of your network. And they're very good at leaving trails behind it and reinfecting you after the fact. But they go into your systems with a medex, and the less sophisticated they are, the bigger the medex. They, if you were to pay the ransom, which I don't recommend, I hate it, but if you were, there's no guarantee you're going to get the key that you paid for, right? So going and recovering back to business continuity within that space is critical. And that's why it takes up to 277 days. So, look, ransomware is like cancer. It's much easier to prevent it than to get rid of it once you've got it, right? So you need to look at things that way. And one of the things I do when I'm talking to a CFO or someone who may not understand this space is I'll ask them, I said, how long can you be down? They go, what do you mean be down? I said, well, what does an hour, a day, a week, a month cost in your business? And they go, well, I'm not sure. And I said, well, how long before your customers go find other suppliers or other providers? Well, I'm not sure. How many years did it take you to get those customers, right? So now you've put that into a financial business impact for them to understand the importance of their security and why they need to be preventative instead of reactive. So, and of course, every 11 seconds, a business falls victim to a ransomware attack. As a result of these longer dwell times, in my experience, the longer they're in there, the more damage they do, the more money they're going to make off you, the more it's going to cost you. So as a result of that, IBM also came out with a report that the average cost of a data breach right now is running at about 4.45 billion, which is, that's business terminal for a lot of customers out there. So, all right. So what are the current limitations to SecOps? These are the four main ones. But what I want to do is we're fortunate enough today to have Dr. Chase Cunningham with us. Chase chairs our board of CISOs. They guide us for innovation and being forward-looking, what I like to call skating to where the puck's going to be in terms of Lumu and opening up our ingenuity and our innovation and stuff so that we stay ahead of the curve and are constantly supporting our customers and leaning forward to that. Now, I want to go into detail on these four things. Before I do that, I'd like to ask Chase. One, I want Chase to introduce himself and give you a little bit of his background. Thank you for being here. But then also, when you're done with that, Chase, I want you to tell me which of these two, if you had to pick two, are the most problematic and why you would pick those. But welcome, Chase, and tell us a little bit about your background today for our audience.
Sure. So thanks for having me. I think it's interesting that we have two folks that worked at the No Such agency on the same call, because it used to be kind of hard to find us out there in the wild, but here we are. I'm a retired Navy chief. I was a cryptologist. Then I worked at Fort Meade for a bit after that. I was a government contractor. And then I was also a forester analyst for a few years. And then after that, I've been off doing work on my own. In the meantime, managed to publish some books and hopefully raise a few relatively productive human beings. So it's a never-ending uphill slog.
So of these four, and please add to them too. I mean, these were things that I felt like were the most pressing issues in the industry right now, being alert fatigue, limited information, that lateral context, the facts that systems are siloed. We have a bunch of shiny objects out there, and it takes the human to integrate them. And then the integrations themselves are complex. Of these four, which do you believe are the two most problematic, and why?
Well, I mean, having sat in the chair doing SecOps work, the ones that really stand out to me as an immediate kind of continuation of a problem that we should have solved a while ago is that context, I think, is king. You've got to be able to have the information that's going to give you a contextual picture. The problem we run into very often is we're looking at things in a kind of binary fashion, and what we're dealing with in the space is not binary problems. You've got to have the contextual information to make an educated approach to the problem and then apply a fix that's not going to cause, like you were saying, degradation or detriment to the business. Because the moment you brick something that is being used for production because of a security thing, guess what? The business thing wins over and security becomes another problem, and that's not what we want. And then the other side of it really is, I like your point on the alert fatigue. And this is something that the market's finally starting to wake up to. Not all data is intelligence, and that gets misconstrued. We think of threat intelligence, we think of the intel sort of operation side of this. All of the data is not always valuable, and all of those alerts are not always useful. So what you're really trying to get to is a crafted specific bit of information that's used by an analyst or something to fix a problem. And if you take those things and put them together in the right context, like I was just saying, you can do things in a quicker, better fashion. And that's ultimately what we're trying to get to.
Okay. And a very good point. And When I talk to a lot of our customers, and I'm kind of jumping ahead on what I think one of the values of Lumu is, and why I was excited about coming here, is the fact that they bring the ground truth out, and that first and second, or second and third level remediation is obvious to even a junior analyst. The what you were referring to, I believe, and what I've witnessed is we have a number, we have siloed systems, but we have siloed information. They're a set of single data points. You used the word binary, which is a really good one. Is like to have the story of what's going on, you've got to stitch it all together. And unfortunately, the way it's been to this point is it's taken people with the experience depth like myself and Chase's to actually figure that out. You're relying on our experience to determine the attack chain, what's going on, whatever. And it doesn't need to be. And that's one of the things I really liked about the Lumu implementation is it puts it in a fashion that junior analysts, I tell people I can take a kid out of high school with attitude and aptitude or a junior analyst and have them effectively running the front end triage of an operational flow just by using Lumu. Because one, we're going to identify the alert, but it's at a level where bad is bad. When we start talking about the artificial intelligence a little later, I'll go into a little bit more depth on how that interlinks and then pull in Chase's views on it. But from my experiences, there's some things out there. There's some very simple, if you want to reduce false positives, get rid of the blinding flash of the obvious. There's, if you're talking to a bad guy, if you're in a bad neighborhood, don't go up on the porch and ask for directions from the crack dealers. There's nothing good's going to happen. It's kind of like nothing. Nothing good happens when you're in contact with the adversary. And that's one of our catch cries that we go and we build our whole deal off of. So having those alerts that link directly to that, automatically blocking what's bad is bad. There's no analyst bias because it's known bad. All right, there aren't a number of behavioral analysis that you had to go and look at a number of different touch points where we could have had analytic bias or improper weighting or whatever to create those false positives. But you have that ability to go ahead and take those out of the fight, get them out of the fight, use your junior analyst, and then provide the context that is the second and third level remediation that you can then pass on to those higher experienced people, that maybe your SIM people, the what I call the 10-pound heads, right? Pass it up to them and have them use the SIM for what you paid for the SIM to do, which is if that context tells you that this particular threat actor is known for data exfiltration, then maybe you're reaching into 443 data and decrypting the packets and seeing if you had any data extraction. That second and third level, but having that analyst having the ability to sit there and hand all the stuff that SIM analysts would have had to go and look up in a matter of seconds is huge. And time is money, and time is critical in this place. So I got a little winded on that. Let me move on. So where do we go from here? And as we go through this with Chase and talk about it, I'm gonna drop in how we believe at Lumu that we've addressed some of these issues. So as we go on, so first off, these are the three. What's the future of SecOps look like? And these are the three main things: orchestration, automation, extended threat visualization. Having that additional context, and that incremental improvement. So before we dive deeper into that, Chase, where do you think, is there anything outside of these three areas that you think would add to it? So we make sure we cover all bases, but these were the three main ones that we pulled up with. Do you have any other ones?
Yeah, well, I think what's important here is actually there's a lot of talk in the industry about this whole zero trust strategy. And if you look at what's being talked about on this as far as the future of SecOps, and honestly, I think the future of cybersecurity gravitates towards, this is what we talk about a lot in the realm of ZT strategic approaches. I want to be able to do things at speed and scale. I want to see everything. I want to be the commander up on the hill looking over the battle space. I really like the fact that you're talking about human validation, because that's where you, like you were saying, you were able to validate that there's actually a control being put in place. And we want humans in the loop here somewhere. This is not, HAL running things for us. And then lastly, that bit around incremental improvement. This is not an immediate push the button and all of a sudden everything's amazing and there's no problems. This is, I'm continually getting better based on experience, practices, implementation, growth, et cetera, et cetera. And those things are extremely well aligned to everything that you see in the realm around zero trust, including the executive orders that have come out from the president's office and et cetera. So this is where the future of the space is going. And lastly, if you're able to do these things, you are a harder target, which is ultimately what this is all going to wind up being about. It's not, will you never have a compromise? Compromise is a given. I want to be a harder target, and I want to make it where it's not worth the adversary's time to stay in my environment.
Totally agree. Couldn't agree more. And one of the capabilities we have is the spam box that we put in there. We put that in there as a correlation event. To your point, what we're trying to do is provide that additional information that would tell that analyst or whatever, hey, look, not only was this a bad contact, but during that contact, that the payload was delivered via spam. So okay, so let's look at that. Did they just get someone to click? Do we need to increase our education, or was this focused at my CFO and my finance group, and now I've got a targeted attack, and that's a totally different type of response. So that context helps drive that response. So you mentioned you're glad to see that we put in the human validation in there. We're just not to the point where we're not at Skynet yet. You used how I'll use Skynet. We're not at Skynet yet. The human is always going to be the validator, and you want him to be, because in the artificial intelligence space, if you look at, most of it is based on probabilistic reasoning. And the way I describe that for people to understand, if you think of a scale, every bit a data point that they're putting in that algorithm to determine whether that's bad or not is going on one side of that scale or another. Now, there's mathematical weighting, there's a bunch of crazy stuff, Pareto games, and hard, fast, and absolute rules, and intersections and joins, not to get too far into the AI. But every one of those things, the more complex it is, the more complex it is, the higher the probability, of a false positive. And when we work with artificial intelligence, we're working down at the blinding flash of the obvious level that, hey, look, bad is bad, just get rid of it, right? So let's go into the details on this a little bit. Let's talk about orchestration and automation. The machine learning and automation will significantly improve efficiency. It has to, right? We need help. The labor shortage isn't going away, and we're staring down the barrel of a recession, right? So not only might you not be able to keep up with the growth because the bad guys are constantly innovating, and like I said, they hide in the weeds. They use legitimate processes and stuff. So we're going to have to find ways to take the easy stuff off the stack, right? And that's the point of the machine learning and the automation. As we stated, the human operator will always be the ultimate arbiter and decision maker. It's your safety check. It's always going to be, until there's confidence, that'll happen. I mean, look at automated cars. There's still always an override, right? You always want to have that. And, the decisions around how remediation and mitigation attack is required context and human insight. It's just, we're just not at the point where they can replace us yet. So, Chase, what are some key elements in the technology needed to achieve the orchestration in your view?
Well, I think we already have a lot of the automation capabilities because of the way that we operate. I mean, we're very cloud heavy, we're very digitally connected, those types of things, but you've got to be able to do it across APIs through different platforms without impacting those products' ability to do what they were kind of designed to do. Because in most instances, where we're getting security telemetry from is going to be coming from something that's not specifically a security solution, if you will. And then the other piece that you have in here, as far as the orchestration, it's pretty much a rarity in today's world that you're going to be responding to a problem in a one-off scenario. You're probably going to have to respond to problems at some sort of scale. So like you said, I can't do that if it's a one-to-one type of approach that continues to basically propagate this whole human capital problem that we have. If we approach the problem this way, automation orchestration is the focus, we do wind up starting to whittle away at that human capital issue, and then we get better collectively. So I think that these approaches make a lot of sense. I think the implementation and use of machine learning to augment and really power that process and that capability is necessary.
What do you think are some good first steps for people? Because it looks ominous, and I'll give you a kind of a thing I ran into at Anheuser-Busch to reiterate that. But from your perspective, what would be some good first steps? Sun Tzu, the first step in a long journey, right?
Well, I look at everything from the perspective of battle space, because if you accept the reality that you're operating in an inherently dangerous environment, and cyber is one of those, and it is literally denoted as battle space by the Department of Defense in 2010. The way that you win victories in battle is where you're going, and you're able to vector resources in to counter effect on target. And that's what we're talking here. So I need to see what's going on, and I need to have really good visibility and an understanding of where to vector those resources. In my opinion, on the defensive posture side, that's one of the key, most critical things, is to be the general, or ex-Navy guy here, admiral, out there, so that you can see what's going on with forces inside of that battle space.
It's interesting. You talk about the battle space. You and I have a lot in common in that space. I have people ask me, hey, I want to get into cybersecurity. What book should I read? I said, Sun Tzu and the Art of War, and then go to the internet, because everything else is probably about dated by the time we publish our books. But so that's I do view cybersecurity as a cyber war. And the techniques that are have worked in warfare for thousands of years work for both sides within this space. So I like that. I said I was going to mention a personal experience when I was at Anheuser. When I got there, the automation and the orchestration was not going very fast. And what I found was it was the true nature of the engineer. They always want to take on the hard problem, right? Solve the Rubik's Cube. And what they were doing, they were doing things at a complexity down level. They were trying to solve the hardest problems first. And then there was a bunch of low hanging fruit that they never, that they could have got done. So we flipped that environment to where, hey, let's get rid of the easy stuff. What's the repetitive motions in your day? What do you do? And could a machine or could an algorithm or whatever emulate what it is you're doing? In our case, for Lumu, the way we do the automation is really, it's not rocket science, and it's not meant to be. That's why we can provide so many different integrations with different firewalls, because what we're really doing is we're concatenating onto the access control list. When we recognize a bad domain name or IP address, either through our 87 public sources that we get, or through our 0-day indicators, and I'll talk more about that later, either measuring the technical distance between a new location and bad behavior, or if that bad guy has operationalized a location against one of our other customers, are saying in our world, every man a sensor. If someone operationalized that, then we list that as a 0-day. So those are distinct, simple automation. So all we're doing is we're adding to that access control list within your firewall to make that block. For your endpoints, we're passing the hashes from the payloads from the known bad actor for the endpoint to act to it. So your solutions don't have to be uber complex to actually be effective, is my point. And the point being is, don't always aim at the hard problem, because you may never finish it, right? So as an incident responder, when we do the tabletops, almost without fail, what usually the engineering teams fail on is when we give them a scenario, the first thing they do is they go straight to what I call heart surgery. They're going straight into the digital forensics and everything else. And I'm sitting there watching them going, you're going to heart surgery, but the patient's bleeding out on the table. It's kind of that Einstein deal. Look for the simple first, right? So that's the key here. And I think it's key with your orchestration and automation as well. So let's talk about the extended threat visualization for maximum efficiency. Look, we think lateral visibility, the what and the when, is critical within Lumu. So what is it? What was the bad guy? How far and wide did they go? And when did they do it? And I'll talk a little bit about that. But first, I want to ask Dave, what do you think companies are missing without lateral visibility, Chase?
Well, I mean, this is really good, because I did a study and got the results back about 2 months ago. And I asked the question, what was the number one thing an organization was concerned about after a compromise had been noted? And overwhelming, every one of them was lateral movement. And then that's the question of, well, why is lateral movement so concerning? Because they're digging in like a tick. And that's the problem that we talk about establishing the beachhead and those types of issues. It's a given compromise is going to occur. The very nature of the software and things we use means someone will find a way to reverse engineer it and use it for some purpose outside the bounds of which it was first intended. But that's not the real problem. If you look at breaches, if you look at compromise activity, the history of the space, I'll give you a compromised asset. I can live with that. I can't live with the entirety of my organization being compromised, which is what lateral movement means. And the only way that you're aware that lateral movement is taking place is to have that visibility and that oversight, and to look for things when they don't quite match up and make sense. And funny enough that you run down this is, people say, well, how would I know lateral movement? You wouldn't unless you know what is supposed to occur and what is different from what is supposed to occur.
Excellent. I totally agree with that. Now, one of the things that got me really excited about coming to Lumu, one of the things that make us different, right? Because you're always looking for what's the difference? Why are you different? It's a Me Too environment. What are we doing different? And one of the things that we do is what we call playback. I mentioned earlier, as soon as we determine something's a 0-day contact, we're going off the context that the bad guys, we're trying to limit the area in which the bad guy can operate. It's a functional warfare that Chase and I both come from, where, if I narrow them into a narrow space, then it's easier to find, fix, and finish them, right? So we're taking away their business case and where they can operate from, because they can do a lot of things. They can hide within processes that are legitimate, that your endpoint might have let through because it's Excel or whatever, or someone opened a port. But what they can't hide is where they're coming from. And when they operationalize that, then we take that away from them. So that's one context of space. But we're also taking away the context of time. Because as soon as we identify one of those, 0 days, is we're immediately going back into up to 2 years of that data that we've collected, and we're looking for first and all contact. What that's doing is that's taking away that dwell time we talked about before and getting rid of it. It's making them speed up you're trying to speed up the enemy so they make mistakes so that you can get them out. So, and that's huge. That's something I haven't seen from anywhere else in this. So and Chase, I'd like some of your, I know I'm kind of hitting you with this fresh. Give me some of your feedback on that. Do you see the value as much as I do in that? I mean, because I thought that was huge when I saw that.
I mean, I think the value's exponentially beneficial, and that's what I'm always looking for in the space around cyber is force multipliers. The ability to do this stuff ad hoc and one-to-one. Okay, I can probably solve a couple problems, but being able to do it across infrastructure at speed with relative ease, and then know that what I'm doing is actually impacting the adversary's ability to be successful. That's super important to me. And I think it's worth noting too that the concept that a lot of people have had for a long time about defense in depth, which is actually expense in depth and a perfect defense, it doesn't hold water and it doesn't exist. So if you accept that that's a reality, which it is, it's like gravity, the real thing that you should be focusing on is, how do I remove the adversary's ability to continually be successful with their operations? If I can impact their ability to be successful, it may not be a perfect, pretty win, but it's a win. If someone breaks into my home, I want them out. I don't care how they leave. I want them out. So that's an important thing that people should consider.
Right. And to double down on that time factor, providing that second and third level remediation steps in a concise manner with that, okay, here's the playback, here's where they went, here's the endpoints they touched, here's the processes they used, go. Right. And I tell people from the incident response world, I call them my apex predators, the guys that are going there and getting the bad guys out. The first thing they're doing at $400 an hour is finding first contact and everything it talked to. I mean, they're following the breadcrumbs to do that. We're providing that to you in this time context at machine speed. So if you did have an incident response come in, those things would take a lot of that front end out of that incident response time. So, you think of it that way in terms of where we're at. So we go to the next one. Okay, so the next one is incremental improvement. I saw this diagram or whatever out on LinkedIn. I asked my people to put it in because I think it says a big message, right? Everyone's heard of 1,000 steps, whatever, but also the law of compounding interest. Well, think of this. I call this the law of compounding effort, right? So if you could gain 1% more efficiency a day, and I think I did the math, and it comes out to about 6 minutes. So if I could take something that takes me 10 minutes to do and cut it to 4 every day, my operation would improve by 38 times just by doing that. Now, the scary part of this diagram is with recession and everything else, and you lose people, it works the same way in the opposite direction if you're losing that efficiency. So, based on that, what are some small steps you think companies can take, Chase, to get that 1%? Where would you focus them? What would you have them center on in terms of a priority? Start here, move here, kind of thing. What in your view, what would be the what I used to call the alligator near the boat? Which alligator near the boat are you going to go after or recommend they go after to improve?
Yeah, I mean, I still think visibility is a huge one, and visibility can get better all the time. There's lots of ways to continue to see more and to have more understanding of what's taking place there. And then following on from that really is the ability to have a growth, a sort of incremental improvement, that one sort of step you're talking about in segmentation, isolation, applying a control, those types of pieces, and doing it across the entirety of the infrastructure. And that person, when I saw this, number one, being kind of a math geek, I was like, cool, we got math in a slide deck. But then number two, I literally have on my wall over here, I've got a thing that says better every day. And I mean, that's something that I think is people try and look at problems and they look at these big, broad issues and go, oh my Lord, how will I ever solve this? You eat an elephant with a spoon. I mean, it's one of those things you just get better a little bit every day. And over time, eventually you get there. And to talk real quickly about your point on that sort of time horizon, even if you want to just write off that this is not for the defender, let's talk about the bad guy. Having been a red team guy, the bad guys are operating on a time horizon as well. So if you are able to say in the inverse, I can flip their ability to continually be successful by 1% every day, they're still losing efficacy. So if you do it correctly and you approach the problem in this manner, you almost can't lose.
Oh, it's perfect. I hadn't thought of it in the reverse, but that's a great point. It's like, and you could even almost say it's inverse by your 1% efficiency. On the other side creates 1% deficiency on their side. So I really like that concept. And Chase and I both come from an environment where it's always an incremental improvement. Unfortunately, in our worlds, it's wrapped around human lives. So in the DoD, it's after action reports, and Chase is a Navy guy. It's hot washes. We did a bunch of work with the SEALs. So it's all about making sure the next time more people come home, right? So in cyber, it's about making sure next time the business survives. One of the sad things I had to deal with the incident response world is I don't know how many times I was watching a grown man cry, especially in the manufacturing space, where he was worried about losing his grandfather's company, right? But unfortunately, in the manufacturing space, they'll drop a couple million on a new press, but won't spend 500 on something they can't reach out and touch until it's critical. And that's why I came up with that, how long can you be down kind of thing. So with this, I want to kind of cap off. I'm going to put this up here. We do recommend you, if you use another term for Chase and I's area, take Lumu out and drive it like you stole it. Please, we encourage you to download the free account if you can scan the code. I'm going to leave that up here while I kind of close out with Chase, so you have a little bit of time to scan that. Chase, I really enjoyed your insights. I want to thank you for coming here today. For anyone that's in the virtual session, please reach out and ask us. Chase and I will ask you. It doesn't have to just be about Lumu. We'll give you war stories and operational context. We're happy to do that. At Lumu, we really want to be your security partner. This isn't about putting a shiny object in your network. We don't think that way. That's why we have that continuous closed loop of using your security infrastructure. We want to work with you currently have to get that 6%, that 6 minutes a day to continually improve. So if you're on the virtual, reach out to us. If you're at the event, come by and see Chase and I at the booth. We'd be happy to, sit there and chat with you about whatever you want to chat with, take you through a spin through the Lumu, show you how we'd use it. We'll show you how I think a security analyst could take prime advantage of it. I've always looked at Lumu as being that overarching technology that validates the firewalls and the endpoints and tells you when something gets through, if a vendor left a port open or whatever, but also works, upstream with your SIM. We can be a data source for your SIM as well, because we do export in Stix Taxi. So we can become a part of the data source as well. So we're built to take down the silos and to stitch those together and do it in a context that everyone can understand. Chase, I want to give you the opportunity to, closing statements or whatever, anything you might want to say going out or anything along those lines.
So I think number one, if you don't have 6 minutes in your day to get better, then you need to reevaluate your calendar. I mean, everybody's got 6 minutes to spare, so think about that. Number two, the thing that stands out to me is literally this is a cybersecurity company that's working to make organizations better. That's saying flat out, here's some free stuff, and it's not free swag. It's not a T-shirt. It's not socks. It's not some Black Hat thermos. You can go download the software and actually put it in place and test it out and run with it. And I've been covering the market for a long time. You don't see that. So if you're a smaller mid-sized organization, MSSP, those folks that are looking for these types of solutions, I would strongly encourage you to go check it out, give it a test drive, because that's a rarity in the space. You don't see the major vendors doing that type of thing. And it lends to the credibility of not just the technology, but the people behind it that have faith in what their solution is doing. So take your 6 minutes and go check out Lumu and get better.
Oh, thanks, Chase. That's an excellent way. And to double down on our ease of integration, it's very easy to install the platform. Look, a platform isn't free if it takes a bunch of your time, because your time's not free. So we take that to heart, and we've done that in our implementation. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone and encourage you to open your free account today. Thanks again, Chase. Look forward to being at the booth with you in Detroit, and look forward to meeting everyone in the Motor City. Want to thank you and have a great day.